This is a video I've been wanting to make for a while after talking about it in passing during my Drake vs. The Weeknd video. And that is the story behind Take Care, specifically The Weeknd's involvement in it. I'm hoping this will be your one-stop shop for everything on this topic, but feel free to correct me on anything or add something I've missed in the comments for me and everybody else. I feel a need to preface videos like this by saying that I am a fan of each artist, but I will keep it real when I think one of them does something wrong. And both of them didn't handle this the best. To set the scene, let's go back to 2010 as Drake is on his ascension following his smash mixtape So Far Gone and debut album Thank Me Later. Meanwhile, The Weeknd had released his first few songs onto YouTube, gaining an underground following and a level of local infamy and legend. Drake and his team like to keep an ear to the ground, especially in their hometown, Toronto. It was Oliver Al-Khatib who first discovered The Weeknd in Drake's camp and showed it to him just outside his apartment building in the pouring rain. And it seemed like Drake liked what he heard. Mind you, this is pre-House of Balloons, and if there was any project, it was his trio of singles for it under the EP Inside the Dangerously Empty Lives of Teenage Girls. Before you call it a suspect title, because I've seen some people say that, he was at most 20 years old writing about the only life he knows. Either way, I assume getting the green light from Drake, Oliver shared The Weeknd's music onto their OVO blog, which was a big deal back then. It put more eyes onto him locally and globally, and was a big cosign. Drake also promoted House of Balloons when it did release, so they were doing their jobs as fans and as collaborators, because by that time, they'd been working in the studio together. Abel had an insatiable need to make it. It was music and fame or bust when it came to his life prospects, but he was also entirely aware of his talent and that what he was making was good. But he was still a relative nobody before House of Balloons, and an invitation by Drake to come by the studio and talk about music wasn't something he would turn down. It was a great opportunity to pick his brain, show him what he was working on, get some feedback, or even just network and see where it goes. And playing Drake a lot of what Abel had been working on and had planned for House of Balloons, Drake really liked what he heard. So much so that he asked for a few of the songs for himself and Take Care. These songs would be Shot For Me, Crew Love, and The Ride. It is worth noting that not every song was complete and album ready before Drake said, "I'll be taking those." Some songs were further along the way, already having a verse or two, but still, this was an opportunity for Drake to tap this up-and-coming star who had this dark and incredible sound. While for Abel, it was a platform. We'll talk about how this collaboration affected their relationship moving forward, and even how the controversy behind this tainted Take Care, and whether that's fair or not in a little bit. But first, I wanted to talk about the album more favourably. It's a hugely influential album in Drake's discography and was a marked evolution from his two previous releases, which was eventually matured and honed into one of his most perfect albums, Nothing Was the Same. Now, for me personally, Take Care was, and still probably is, my favourite Drake project. It's just a comfort album to me and something that I don't think could be replaced as much as I love Iceman or even as much as I've grown to love Views. But I've always said Nothing Was the Same is Drake's best album, and that is a different discussion than my favourite. And I never knew why Take Care meant more to me or hit me more sonically until I learned about Abel's involvement and just how much I love that dark, moody Toronto sound, which kind of exploded with this album and this era. And that makes even more sense to me because House of Balloons will always be my favourite Weeknd project, and I don't think that could ever change. So this era and this sound is so beloved to me. Not to say they're equal or even that comparable. Drake and Abel, or Take Care and House of Balloons, are still widely different albums, but pull from a similar sound and pit of emotion. Whether Abel inspired its sound and feel or not, it served as a jumping off point and Drake's first dedicated go at it. And it clearly being something that resonated with Drake and was something he was passionate about pursuing, Nothing Was the Same became his true vision and perfection of the sound. That just makes a lot of sense to me when we think about how Drake views his albums. It was always a hotly debated topic in Drake's fandom, where you would Take Care or Nothing Was the Same guy. Drake was a Nothing Was the Same guy. I think he viewed that album as his magnum opus, the perfect coming together of his talent and execution on all fronts, from his bars and delivery to his hooks and production. There was a certainty to who he was on that album, and by admission, maybe that was lacking on Take Care. It felt like he was at the peak of his powers, knowing his sound, what he wanted to sound like, and what he wanted to say. And as we dig a little deeper into Take Care, maybe he loved Nothing Was the Same more because it felt more like his own than something that was worked on with The Weeknd and this new idea. Now, I'm not trying to oversell Abel's importance to the album by saying that. He officially contributed to 4 songs out of the full 20 when we include Hate Sleeping Alone. That's 20% of the album to any math-inclined listeners out there. And we'll touch on these songs more specifically in a second because you'll notice I only mentioned 3 before. Now, is 20% of an album marginal? I wouldn't say so, it's something. But to claim that Drake owes The Weeknd for Take Care is hugely disrespectful to Drake and his team in my opinion. Unless that dark Toronto sound that's running throughout the album is all born of what he heard The Weeknd doing and the success he was having. So let's dive deeper. What were Drake's aims and ambitions with Take Care? It served as a big moment in Drake reclaiming or doubling down on his Toronto roots. On his road to stardom, he faced the risk of letting it get to him and moving out to LA and just making whatever. But he didn't let it take him away from his city or the feeling that it represents. It's something you have to respect about Drake. From the very beginning, and a song like City Is Mine, Drake's been all in on his hometown. And again, we have to consider what was happening at the time. Drake had finally had a chance to come back home after running around the world with Lil Wayne for years and being his Young Money soldier. But now it was his turn to spread his wings and really take ownership of his career. And coming back home and seeing how much it had changed really inspired him. He had become proof that it was possible and inspired other young creatives to follow in his footsteps. There was this hungry and insatiable energy that Toronto was heralding at this time. It was a big change from the Toronto he grew up in, one that was known for envy and shame. Pretending to be American was way cooler, even if you just said, yeah, my family actually spends the winters in Buffalo. He was highly inspired by this movement. He felt a part of it and wanted to make sure he was involved in it and pushing it forward. So while coming back home allowed him to reconnect with his city and his friends, it was the perfect opportunity to really put his city on the map and double down as a hometown hero and make it a place that people will never forget and be proud of. And to do this, he and his team were hellbent on having their own sound. What would become this Toronto sound that sounds like the city and is dark, moody, and cold. It was for those kids driving around the streets of their hometown, reflecting on life and hoping they could do more, like he used to do. And it was made by people who lived that life and those kids who locked themselves in their bedroom studio making dark music. And Abel came into the picture shortly afterward, perfectly fitting the goal and direction of the album, and it made their collaboration perfect. Drake's time of chasing a pop hit with an Alicia Keys hook was over. He wanted to make music that represented himself, his friends, his city, and his people. And that's what Take Care did. So when we talk about Abel's involvement and their collaboration, he was hugely influential, but a piece of the puzzle. But is there more to it? Because even personally, the young and raw talent of Abel inspired Drake to sing and perform better on stage, improve his songwriting, and just better his music. It's a classic case of going harder than the guy you're in the studio with, especially when it's the young kid who's hungry to be you or overtake you. It's high praise and a ton of credit. And retroactively, people could see parallels between Kid Cudi's impact on Kanye's 808s and Heartbreak. Or even Abel throwing in another example, like when Jay-Z hit up Kanye for The Blueprint. He knew he was important, and Drake did too. But who gets credit for this Toronto sound? The truth is, a single person can't claim it. It's built on history and ingrained in the city. Drake's long-term collaborator and producing legend Noah 40 Shabib gave credit to a lot of people. It all started before them and evolved from Toronto royalty, Choclair, and Socrates. And then he gives credit to the new wave of Toronto producers like himself, T-Minus, and Boy Wonder. And even Abel himself says that his sound was Drake's sound, but with an edge to it. All people can do is innovate on what they know and sprinkle in a bit of themselves. And while Abel revealed that Drake was heavily inspired by his sound and wanted to incorporate it into his album, as we talked about, it was a moment of stars aligning because it was something he was going for regardless of Abel making some noise. But it was still something that Drake thanked him for privately and even on the album's credits, where he says that the album wouldn't have been possible without him. But Abel was even inspired by this new guy coming out of Atlanta named Future and his project Dirty Sprite 1. It was a sound that Drake and Abel bonded over. And it all goes to show that inspiration goes around and it's all about what people do with it. So that's why it's hard to pin down ownership of this sound and who deserves the most credit for it. But for argument's sake, Abel did give that credit to Drake. Speaking of ownership, let's talk about the songs in question and what Abel provided to Take Care more tangibly. Let's go back to their first few meetings, because it probably went a little something like this. They get in contact. Drake and his team say they're big fans and would love to link up and get in the studio to chop it up. Abel plays what he's been working on and things go from there. And 3 songs stood out to Drake that he really wanted to have. Now this is pretty common practice in music. Whether there's a deal to be struck or if experience is enough, songs are given to bigger artists all the time. A random one that comes to mind is Bryson Till's Persuasion being a song that Victoria Monet made. And in Abel's case, he said it himself. He was hungry and would have given Drake anything in the moment. Everything was up for grabs. And crucially, this is pre-House of Balloons, a time where Abel felt the freest creatively because there was no deadline. He had all the time in the world to create his perfect project, and that changed with his next 2 mixtapes. And he didn't regret this either. He didn't know where he'd be if Drake didn't co-sign him and shine that light on him, because make no mistake, this was a huge opportunity for this up-and-coming kid. But looking at these songs specifically, it's always noted that it's officially 4 songs. Shot For Me, Crew Love, and The Ride all originally meant for House of Balloons. And Practice, which was more specifically made for Drake and Take Care, with Abel writing the hook for it. But there is another song that never really gets mentioned by Drake, 40, or even Abel, which is funny because he doesn't shy away from giving himself credit where it's due in his early interviews. And that song is Good Ones Go, where he has some background vocals, melodies, and some writing credits. So that would technically make it 5 songs. Our percentage is rising to 25%, a whole quarter of the album. But I guess the last thing we need to figure out is how much of these songs were unchanged. Abel has a pretty big presence on these songs while only having one official feature, that being Crew Love, which features a lot more Weeknd than Drake. Abel has his own verse and the hook, while Drake replaces Abel's second verse, all on a beat that Abel provided. It sounds like this song was mostly finished, and you can even hear Abel's demo version of the song, even if he hates his second verse. I think Drake's verse helps this song a lot compared to the original demo, but maybe I'm biased because I fucking love this song. But that's a lot of influence on a single song either way. Shot for Me in comparison is co-written by Abel, but there's no reference track or demo to compare it to. So I imagine some lines here and there or the hook and premise were from whatever Abel had been working on. Good Ones Go, like I said, just has those background vocals and little harmonies which do stand out and are pretty clearly Abel, and he is credited as one of the writers on it. Abel said that practice was made for Take Care, but it's unclear how much of it was kept the same. I heard one demo of it and it sounded completely different, so maybe it completely changed, or maybe it didn't, I don't know. And finally, The Ride is an incredible song, and Abel is heard all throughout Drake's version on its hook and with various vocals. But this was one of those songs that were never finished. I think we hear exactly what Drake originally heard that made him need this beat and vocal to close out the album. So tangibly, this is Abel's involvement. We spoke about the sound and feel more generally, but these are the songs where The Weeknd's fingerprints are still visible. Some people hate this because they feel like they make the album what it is, and are some of the best songs on the album, and they were stripped away from being on Abel's. Before we move on, 40 does have some interesting comments that aim to discredit Abel's involvement on the album that I think are worth mentioning. Although I think we should take them with a pinch of salt because of the conflict and tension between OVO and EXO that grew and existed when these quotes came out in 2020. Let alone this narrative itself that only continued to grow and become a touchy subject for Drake fans amid this war with Abel. 40 said that out of the entire Take Care process, Abel was only in the studio with them for 2 days. Maybe that's hyperbolic, or maybe Abel's direct involvement was that minimal, instead just handing over frameworks and ideas for Drake and his team to work around, or in the case of Crew Love, cut a verse. The only thing that puts me off this is how Drake spoke about Abel in the album's build-up. He was shouting him out and naming him as one of the main features and on the album a bunch, so take that as you will, but I thought it was worth putting out there. It's also worth covering the OVO sound debacle just to be thorough because I personally don't think it was that big of a deal, but it is part of their Take Care history which I view in 2 parts, the musical side and the business side. Basically, due to Abel's involvement in Take Care and the platform that Drake had given him, Drake's crew assumed that this relationship would evolve into him signing for their new label. I caught myself saying Drake's new label because he's really just the face of it while he doesn't really care about running it. And that makes a whole lot of sense to me. He's entirely focused on being the biggest star he can be, especially back then. So while he's the front-facing guy for it, it makes sense that he wasn't too bothered when Abel said he was going his own way. I think he even respected it and understood it. Abel always had supreme confidence in himself and didn't want to limit himself and sign to an artist he believed he could be as big as or bigger than in the future. And I think it's fair to say he made the right choice. But not everybody in Drake's team felt the same. And this is what really led to the bust up and breakup of OVO EXO long term to me. But between them personally, it was a non-factor, and nothing compared to what was to come. Like I said, this album carries some controversy and is often used in any war between fans of Abel and Drake. And it was really sparked by Abel's first major interviews. His involvement in Take Care was always questioned. And as a new artist who was media shy and almost always anxious in those settings, he was bound to slip up, or speak his mind and forego typical media training etiquette. And him saying things like, "I gave up half my album to Drake" sounds really bad. But not only is that hyperbole, compared to his 10-song long trio of mixtapes, he's about right when we think about those 3 songs plus 1. Now, I don't want to say that's nothing. If Drake made a 40-song album, that percentage would get lower and lower, but that's not the point. It's not about what it became for Drake, it's what it cost Abel. It was comments like that that stuck with Drake and became this thing he had to defend from media and fans alike amid similar issues he was having with guys like Kendrick Lamar, Future, and even Kanye at the time. It felt like another competitor and knife in his back during what must have been such an intense and stressful time in his career. And it made things really awkward between them. It's worth remembering that despite Abel calling Drake one of his closest friends in the industry at the time, that's not saying a whole lot. It's not like they were hanging out every day. Drake hearing those quotes would have come out the blue, and I don't get the vibe that they would have caught up to hash things out. So it turns into another subliminal war that he has to act like doesn't exist, and I think there's perfect video evidence to show this. Less than a month after Abel's first major interview, he makes an appearance at OVO Fest 2013. The "gave up half my album" quote was said in 2015, but this one was still just as precarious as he inadvertently brought Drake's creative integrity into question amid rumours of them beefing behind closed doors. Just by revealing what he did for and meant to Take Care, it started to discredit the album and Drake's work. Obviously, it would have been a bad look if Drake booted him off last minute, and it was a big moment for the city for them to be together and make it one of the greatest OVO fests in its history. But in Release 100 Gigs footage, we get a backstage look post-event at Drake awkwardly ignoring Abel amid his entourage, after being so buddy-buddy with him on stage. It's a hard watch, and is really lame from Drake in my opinion. I just can't imagine it being accidental watching the footage. Abel looks centimeters away from him, and it's only right before the clip ends that Drake acknowledges him. Meanwhile, Abel is just waiting for Drake to give him some eye contact and dap him up after a great show. It just seems like a petty move from Drake to assert some dominance and little bro him. And Abel is not the kind of guy to take that kindly and brush it off. And while I want to keep this video narrowed in on Take Care, this clearly stems off it to me and led to their separation. Abel, rightly so, views himself as an equal. Even if he didn't handle things the best, he wants his respect. And I wouldn't be surprised if Abel and Drake didn't speak for a while after this. And considering him comparing them to Jay-Z and Kanye in some ways, or how it would be cool for them to be two monsters towering over Toronto as legends versus Big Bro and Little Bro, that was a clear divide and something neither of them played right. My 2 cents, I think it played out as well as it could have, to be honest. It's impossible to not account for ego. How else would you expect them to respond in this situation? Grown adults would talk it out and clear the air, but they're superstars. That's too easy. I don't blame Abel for not signing to OVO. I respect Drake for respecting his choice. I hate the way the OVO guys felt like Abel owed them anything, and I understand the EXO guys standing by their guy. And as it all later plays out, I understand each side defending their side and their guy. But most of all, I hate that this cost us so much great music and what should have been an incredible era of OVO EXO. Instead, it was just a really nice idea. And that's the whole story, the tale of Take Care. Whose side are you on? Did Drake do anything wrong? Was Abel well within his rights? Or do you not give a fuck? I think it's an interesting story, but that's probably the right feeling to have. I love both of these guys, and while I think it's a shame, this album is just a dot of a bigger picture. And if you want to learn more about that, check out my full video on their beef, where I break down sneak disses and other stories that led to two of Toronto's and music's biggest stars hating each other. I hope you enjoyed and hopefully learned a thing or two about what might be one of your favourite albums. I'll see you next time, have a great day or night.